Welcome to TC Daily, the technology show brought to you by Tech Central. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so on YouTube at youtube.com/TechCentral or subscribe to our daily newsletter at techcentral.co.za/newsletter. Now, we're having a bit of a multi-choice time here at Tech Central. Earlier this week, we had Inyiko Shiburi, the CEO of MultiChoice South Africa, in the studio. And I'm very pleased to welcome another top exec from MultiChoice, and that's Barry Dubovsky, who's Chief Operating Officer of MultiChoice Connected Video. Good to see you, and thanks for coming into the studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Very exciting.
Great. Now, Barry, in those few words, I think our reviewers and listeners will have already picked up that you have an Australian accent.
Correct.
How did you end up working for an African pay TV operator?
Great question. I had no idea what I was in for, but just mutual contacts originally reached out from businesses that I worked in Australia, and an opportunity came up to sniff out what MultiChoice was all about, and the comment was, you're based in Dubai, you look after sub-Saharan African markets, and I was working in the digital space originally. And when you get a question like that or an opportunity like that, you immediately start asking more questions than the other person has answers around. So it was all a bit of a whirlwind experience, and then before you know it, it's been almost 5 years now. It's my third role within MultiChoice, and I think the connected video space is really the most exciting one for me at the moment, and it's a really progressive space to be involved in, so I'm really enjoying it.
Great. So you were headhunted into MultiChoice.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about your background, though. You used to work for Telstra, I believe?
Correct, yeah. So I was into telcos. So Telstra was one of Australia's biggest telcos. I was there for about 3 years or so, and prior to that I worked at Deloitte for about 6 and a bit years as well, just in consulting, and they call it a great initial career starter around procrastination. We don't know what to do, and you kind of sniff out different industries, different types of jobs and engagements, and really started progressing into the digital space, and that's where I ended up since then. Okay.
And were you in Dubai when you were headhunted, or
No.
were in Oz?
All I knew, Dubai had a very large building and there was a lot of sand. So I didn't know much about Dubai. Again, when the opportunity came, it was very overwhelming with the cities, the countries, and what was going on. So it was all a lot to take in. And I did a look and see trip for a couple of days just to see what Dubai was all about. It seemed okay. It had what I thought it needed to have. And before I knew it, I was there, and then now it's been just under 5 years.
Right. Okay. So you're based in Dubai. That's where you're headquartered out of. MultiChoice is actually quite a big operation there now, doesn't it? Who sits in Dubai? Who sits in Joburg? How does it work?
Yeah, look, I think we've got some of the executive team and a lot of the strategic minds sit in the Dubai office. It's not particularly big. I'd say there's no more than 15 people in Dubai, right? But you've obviously got Calvo and Imtiaz who are based out of Dubai. And obviously my boss, Yelisa, she's based there in the connected video space. So there's a handful of resources, and obviously, we travel to SA quite a lot. That's where the bulk of the team is, and particularly now on the connected video side, and with Showmax pushing into some of the rest of Africa markets like Nigeria, etc. Now that demands a little bit more travel into those markets as well. And we've recently built up a team in Nigeria and really kind of taking that market really seriously and really trying to grow there.
So is it a travel-related thing that you're based in Dubai? It's easier to get into markets in West Africa, East Africa, etc.
Exactly. You're kind of centrally positioned, right, and just enables a lot of travel opportunities. So, that's been the thinking. I mean, it was all set up before I got there, but it seems to work, right? But I'm on the road quite a lot, but I'm enjoying it.
Okay. So tell me a bit about your role and your portfolio at MultiChoice. What does it encompass exactly?
Yeah, so it's essentially looking after the operations of the connected video business, and essentially that spans both the DSTV streaming environment, and what we're responsible for there is the product and the engineering side of the equation, right? And then we've also got Showmax, obviously, and that's an end-to-end accountability, commercial accountability around that product, and ensuring the growth and the subscriber objectives and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. So essentially the full portfolio there spans everything from marketing, PR, all the way through to product analytics, all those sorts of things. So it's a very busy space, but it's great. Yeah.
Showmax, when it was launched, I forget when it was now. Maybe you can run us before your time.
Before my time, I think it just had its seventh birthday.
Seventh birthday.
Yeah.
There we go. When it was launched, it was launched as a very independent business, quite external to MultiChoice. It had its own offices, and its independent management team, etc., etc. But it's become much more closely integrated into the MultiChoice stable in recent years. What was the strategic thinking behind sort of bringing it into the fold, if you like?
Yeah, look, I think it needed its opportunity to ultimately come together as an individual entity and to kind of start up in its own kind of space. But we obviously recognise that there's a lot of opportunity to leverage the broader DSTV ecosystem, right? There's a lot of learnings working alongside a business that's been running for many decades, and there's a lot of benefit, I guess, being associated with, let's say, a bigger brother like the broader DSTV environment. So it's something that we continue to work through and to think about in terms of marketing support, general experience around operating in markets like in Nigeria, which obviously again is quite different to where Showmax has historically focused. So we get a lot of insights working with our DSTV, our GoTV, and the broader MultiChoice ecosystem and those colleagues.
So Barry, take us through, and we can get a little bit technical here because our audience is quite tech savvy. Maybe take us through what it's like, day-to-day operations of running a video streaming company.
Yeah, look, it's a multifaceted space, right? I mean, we've got quite a sophisticated product and engineering space, right? And we're obviously continually looking at global trends in terms of where the industry is moving and exactly the type of focal points in terms of initiatives and transformative ideas that we can come up with and how we actually execute against them. I think we have to be very data-led, right? We always look at every part. It's a digital business at the end of the day, right? And some of the things that I'm particularly interested in is understanding essentially how our customers engage with our property, right? All the way through from signing up, right? The types of payment options that they're using, what the drop-off points are across the funnel, all the way through to the type of content that they end up watching. Right, so everything needs to be supported by data, and that really does drive a lot of the transformative initiatives that we're looking at. As I said, we continue to look at best practice globally, and that ultimately infuses into the type of work that we do.
It's interesting that I guess in streaming it's much more possible to know exactly what your customers are interested in, demanding, etc. Whereas in the traditional pay TV environment, I mean, imagine that's much more difficult. I mean, there's obviously Nielsen Research and all those other research companies that can then help traditional pay TV companies, but you have an amazing granularity of data in terms of what you can know about your customers. Does that inform your day-to-day decision making about what content stays on the platform, what you add, etc.?
Everything is dictated by data. I think one of the big areas that we're really focusing in on is content discovery. Right, and what we really focus on is understanding, what time of the day customers are watching what, right? What kind of content appeals to them for different demographics, right? And continuing to use, I guess, a lot of churn propensity modeling is something else that we particularly look at to understand, what kind of attributes is a customer displaying before they end up churning, right? So we're just continually getting smarter around our customer base, and we use that to inform all of our broader interventions.
Right, you must be able to make some pretty accurate descriptions and know, based on previous behavior of other customers, that this customer, there's a 80% chance that he's going to cancel in the next 7 days.
Exactly, and that also applies right up to the top of the funnel in terms of lookalike audiences and finding the best way to attract someone that they ultimately come into our funnel, become a customer, and then those strategies are, I guess, redeployed and I guess continually finessed to get maximum subscribers coming through.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's talk a bit about 4K because that's I think that's the exciting news. It's in MultiChoice broadly, not just in Showmax. We had, as I mentioned, Nyiko Shiburi in the studio, and he spoke about the launch of the World Cup on DSTV in 4K in November. But you're going to be doing the same thing on Showmax. On your Showmax Pro tier, you're going to be launching also the Football World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, which runs, I think, from the... is it the 18th of December? Sorry, the 18th of November to the 20th of December, or have I got it the other way around?
I think is it the 20th now? They just moved it out.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, but it's 20th of November.
18th.
I think so, somewhere around there. Yeah,
right.
Correct.
So obviously a big showcase that happens every 4 years, and you mentioned when we spoke a year ago that you were going to do it this year, and you
I had to commit to you.
You're on track to doing it. We're just weeks away from the launch of the World Cup. What's been involved? Take us through the technical background in terms of what you've had to do to get ready for this.
Look, I think it's all been focused around stability and making sure that the customer experience is optimized, right? I think it's been a lot of reviewing around the performance of our existing environment and understanding how we need to fortify to ultimately deliver a 4K experience. It requires a lot more. It puts a lot more strain, I guess, on our back-end environment, right? Because it's a lot more demanding in terms of bandwidth and network capacity and all those sorts of things. So obviously those are the things that we were monitoring and progressively developing over the last 12 months in preparation for the World Cup.
Yep.
But I think the key thing for me with the World Cup in 4K is to make sure that customers are getting a fluid experience, right? That there's no rebuffering and there's no stability constraints, because it's all well and good, offering, a higher resolution that's a more engaging and more immersive experience. But in the event that things slow down or if there's issues with stability, then all the benefits that you've picked up as a result of deploying something like 4K go out the window.
Yeah.
So it's something that we obviously need to really prepare very tightly. And what we've been doing is running some kind of ad hoc tests behind the scenes with the EPL recently. And just testing out our 4K capability. So far so good, and we're going to continue to evolve it essentially right up until the point that first games start, and there's going to be a lot of monitoring in place to make sure that customers are getting a really good experience. And I think it's really exciting for us to finally live up to those expectations.
So has that been internal testing you've been doing with the EPL, or have customers who've happened to tune in been able to get a 4K feed? They just didn't realize it was there.
Yeah, we saw customers. I mean, obviously nothing was ever marketed, and it was just done very isolated, just to give ourselves a real life environment test of what it could look like when the World Cup starts. But we did see quite a few customers comment on social media and say, "Oh, I just got the 4K feed for the football," and I think it was really positive. So if we can continue to maintain that level of positivity and really good experiences, then we're on to a winner.
Great. So are you going to be broadcasting all games in the World Cup in 4K?
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
How many is that? It's 50 something?
64.
64 games.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Amazing. Great stuff. So what happens after the World Cup? Do you continue to broadcast selected content in 4K? Do you take the whole service 4K at some point? So
I think we obviously need to see how the World Cup performs. I mean, that's kind of our pivotal moment to kind of define, essentially how successful, hopefully, we have been, delivering that service. And then obviously from there, we need to reconvene and then understand, well, what is our kind of our longer term play around 4K? I mean, 4K is part of it, right? But at the same time, we're really focusing in on other really relevant bits of functionality that supports a local African consumer, right? So you've got the 4K, which is on one side of the equation. You've also got the bandwidth capping, the low data usage, right? And some of those bits of functionality to essentially enable more customers to access our product. So you've kind of trying to cover off both sides of the equation, and we're going to continue looking after both kind of the 4K side of the world as well as the network capping and kind of download functionality and low data usage environments going forward as well.
Because you really do have both sets of customers in the same country here in South Africa, for example. You've got guys who watch on mobile connections who really can't afford to pay for 4K stream onto their device if the device even supports 4K.
Yep.
And then you've got guys with uncapped fiber. So you've got to appeal to both markets.
Yeah, and I mean, what's been exciting as well is we've recently deployed HD on mobile for our live football offering as well. And look, as recently as this weekend when I flew into SA, I'd had a lot of time in immigration, and I was going through the experience watching, I think it was the Man City Liverpool game, and just monitoring, I guess, the quality of the experience, and it was genuinely first rate. Like it did not buffer. There was no, and I was on roaming as well, so my network strength wasn't particularly great either. And I tested it out, and it was working flawlessly. So that's the intent for us to continue on that trajectory.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in the Showmax Pro product as a product. It's obviously Showmax came first as an entertainment offering, costing, I think it was 99 Rand a month at launch. I think it still is 99 Rand a month. Correct. Or you could get it for less or even free if you're on some DSTV.
Correct. Yeah.
UKs. You then a couple of years later launched Showmax Pro, which added a whole lot of channels like sports, live sports, live news channels, and one or two other things.
Yeah, more sports documentaries as well. Yep.
What was the thinking behind launching Showmax Pro, and is there any product like it in the world?
I'm personally a massive sports fan, right? That'll start with that. I'm thrilled with where we're at the moment with Showmax Pro, and we're obviously going to continue to evolve. But the thinking was, look, you've got a whole different set of target customers who want to access, sport, football predominantly, in different ways, right? I think one of our key mantras is all about accessibility, right, and making sure that we connect more customers or enable them to experience, football and all the content that Showmax Pro provides. In a new and innovative way, right? So for us, I think, historically the price point for Showmax Pro was not where it needed to be relative to the market. We've made, quite a few adjustments as recently as over the last month. We've took the price down twice, right? We did a permanent price down, and now we're sitting at $299 for Showmax Pro on leanback, right, which is a phenomenal price point for the type of content that you get. And what we're also doing as part of that is continuing to evolve that experience, right? And we're making the immersive, we're bringing the game, well, we're bringing the football and the sports to customers in just very different ways, right? And just, the ability to access content on demand, the ability to set reminders before games are starting, where, we've looked at different kind of other providers globally that offer sports properties, and we're stacking up against them. I think the Showmax Pro product is at a global level of quality, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, because we're only starting to see global streaming names entering the sports space now. I mean, the biggest of them all, Netflix, isn't even in the live sports business. We've seen Amazon. I think Amazon was bidding for the Indian cricket rights at one point. I'm not sure if they won those rights. I can't remember.
In some markets, perhaps.
In some markets, maybe. Apple was involved in some bidding for some or other sports. I forget what the details of that. So we're starting to see the big global streaming companies just starting to dip their toes into this idea of live sports streaming. But you guys have been doing it for a while through Showmax Pro. Do you expect to see the market shifting in terms of live sports going forward? Do you think it's become much more of a streaming owned proposition? And traditionally, it's been the likes of ESPN or cable companies, or satellite companies that have bought up sports rights. Do you increasingly think that there's going to be competition from streamers for sports rights, and how's that all going to play out?
Yeah, look, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it is inevitable. I think the linear and the satellite-based experiences still have a significant amount of shelf life, right, particularly in Africa. But I think what's really exciting for us, I guess, is working alongside our SuperSport colleagues. I mean, everything is bundled into a single environment. I mean, the fact that you look at some of the global, industry peers, and content is heavily segmented and disaggregated across multiple providers. In the UK, for example, you probably need 3 or 4 different subscriptions to be able to get, just the full season of the EPL. Right. So for us, we don't have that issue. So which is really exciting, and you can just bundle it into a single proposition. Right. Going forward, I mean, of course, there's going to be challenges around rights and all those sorts of things, and that's where the SuperSport team needs to continue to keep an eye on the market. But for us, I think the priority is to make sure that the digital and the kind of the product experience is effectively supporting the content that we have available by SuperSport.
Does MultiChoice encourage competition internally? I know when Showmax was originally launched, I think one of the ideas behind it was to kind of foster this creative destruction inside the organization to, here's a newfangled, let's learn about it outside of the traditional pay TV broadcasting entity. It's now been brought into the fold. But do you still encourage, as an entity, does MultiChoice still encourage competition between Showmax and DSTV? And if there is that sort of competition, how do you make sure it doesn't become unhealthy?
Yeah, look, I don't necessarily see it as competition. I think we are very clear on kind of the delineation of our target markets, right? So DSTV has got a very specific focus around the types of customers that they're going after, right? Whereas on the Showmax side, we've got our own, target segments and cohorts that we really want to appeal to, right? So you'll be able to see that going forward, I think, in terms of the marketing and the positioning that we put forward around Showmax and Showmax Pro in particular. We've got a bunch of World Cup ads, starting to hit, on-air properties going forward, and billboards, and we've got a particular brand persona that we're trying to cultivate, and I think that will quite clearly delineate the positioning that you would normally see with DSTV versus how we're approaching it within a Showmax environment. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's competition, but we actually do work quite closely together to make sure that overall we are capturing the full market and appealing to customers on their terms relative to both properties that we have.
Understood. You touched on the fragmentation of the media industry and the need for customers, perhaps have 4 different services to watch different types of content. I'm fascinated at how this is going to play out in the coming years, and we're keen to get a view from you on what consumers are going to demand going forward. At the moment, I just think of myself. I've got a smart TV at home. I probably have subscriptions to 3 or 4, perhaps even 5 or 6 streaming services, which I switch between. But it's quite difficult to find the content I'm looking for. You tend to fire up one app and look around, fire
Yeah.
up another app and look around. How do you see this playing out going forward? I know that when we spoke to Nico Shaburi a few days ago about DSTV Glass, a lot of the initiative there is about making content easier to discover. What do you think of the fragmentation that we've seen in broadcast and streaming, and where's it going, and what's the ultimate solution to all of this going to be?
I think MultiChoice has got a very clear position as being, a super aggregator, right? I mean, the reality is, as you say, the market is heavily fragmented, and the expectation is that's probably going to continue for some time. There could be more convergence down the line. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but I think that would be inevitable, where you have multiple different, content providers that exist in the market. I mean, as I said, when I got here earlier in the week and driving around, you just see so much different entertainment options promoted on billboards and everywhere. Clearly the entertainment wars are at our doorstep within South Africa, right? So I think what's most important for us, is we obviously keep a pulse around the market and the new entrants and the type of content that's being, promoted. But we need to stick to our guns in terms of what's worked for, MultiChoice over many years, right? And continue to, adapt the quality of the content that we're pulling together, but presenting it in different ways. And I guess that's really the genesis of, or kind of the mantra rather of what Showmax and Showmax Pro is from a sports perspective.
Before I let you go, Barry, I'm asking you to do a lot of prognostication today. But I just wanted to ask you about where you see the future of video entertainment going. We've seen the rise of streaming in recent years has challenged the business models of traditional pay TV operators, and that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. But particularly, I think in the African context, how does this play out in the coming years? Does streaming eventually replace traditional cable or satellite-based pay television at some point? I'm looking way into the future now, say 10 or 15 years from now. Will Africa take much longer to get there? Where do you think this is all headed? Yeah,
look, I think it will take time, right? I think both business models have very much got significant shelf life. Obviously, the streaming space is I guess the new kid on the block, relatively speaking, right? And that's something that we're continually learning and exploring as to what is the best way to deliver content this way, right? We still see across the continent that data in some markets, in particular in rest of Africa, data is still a massive blocker, right? Everyone's on their phone though. Everyone is on their phone. I was in Lagos about a month or so ago, and everyone's on their phone. So we know that we need to tap into that space. But the challenge is it's text though, not it's WhatsApp and that sort of thing, not video, which is very data hungry. But I guess the point is going forward into the future. The expectation is that data will become more accessible, right? One thing that we continually look at is relevant partnership opportunities as well to, I guess, reduce some of those barriers to entry for customers. And I mean, we're ultimately looking at the opportunity where we can unlock the broader market, right? And when that becomes, more feasible, right, then you would expect that there'd be significant exponential growth. I mean, there's no coincidence that the competition globally is looking at Africa because the potential is mammoth, right? And it's something that, because we've had so much experience on the continent and talking about, our DSTV and the GoTV colleagues across the rest of Africa, we've essentially got a really good opportunity for us to continue to tap into. So going forward, I think, streaming is definitely a big part of the future, right? But it's ultimately how we can see, or how we can, foresee some of those broader barriers to entry progressively, eradicate or become less of a hurdle. And then, we're expecting, significant exponential growth. So we need to be ready when that opportunity comes. Right. Well, it's been great to talk to you, Barry, and for your insights. Thank you for your insights into the world of connected video. And I look forward to seeing the World Cup in 4K. Excellent. Thanks for having me. Barry Dubovsky, Chief Operating Officer of MultiChoice Connected Video. Thank you for your time. Cool. Thank you.